Coming up on the Mindful Midlife Crisis.
There was a website for Korean adoption services. They had a page for biological families looking for adoptees, which I looked, nobody's looking for me. But they also had the opposite of that, where adoptees could post information on there for biological families to find. So I posted all my information on there. And what happened is that our tour in 2020 got canceled in March. And probably about 2 weeks after that, I received an email from the adoption agency in Korea telling me that a woman contacted them saying that she was my sister and asking if I wanted to do DNA testing. We were just started lockdown here in Minnesota, and my first thought in my mind was, great, I finally find my biological family, and we're all going to die in a pandemic apocalypse. So it was so many like, oh, this is awesome, but no, I'm never going to get to see them. And what if they die with COVID or something before I get there? And so we go through the process. My first sample got lost. I sent the second sample, and then it was Memorial Day weekend in 2020. I received an email from the social service agency saying that my mom had gone in and tested and there was a match. And I found out later on, after I communicated with my family, that my sister, I'm the oldest in the family, my sister, who's next in age to me, she found the post on Korean Adoption Services website. And she had not known that that was available. And I'm not sure if she was just looking and Googling and found my name, my birth name, but that's how it happened. So it just coincided with everything happening with the tour through me in Korea.
Welcome to the Mindful Midlife Crisis, a podcast for people navigating the complexities and possibilities of life's second half. I'm your host, Billy Lahr, an educator, personal trainer, meditation teacher, and overthinker who talks to experts who specialize in social and emotional learning, mindfulness, physical and emotional wellness, cultural awareness, finances, communication, relationships, dating, and parenting, all in an effort to help us better reflect, learn, and grow so we can live a more purpose-filled life. Take a deep breath, embrace the present, and journey with me through the Mindful Midlife Crisis. Welcome to the Mindful Midlife Crisis. I'm your host, Billy Lahr. Thank you for tuning in wherever you are. The purpose of this show is to provide a platform that gives people the space and permission to share their expertise and life experiences in order to help others navigate the complexities and possibilities of life's second half. Now, just to be clear, you don't have to wait until your 30s, 40s, or 50s to apply this free and useful information. I know I would have greatly benefited from this information when I was younger. So all you young punks out there who are like, I'm not going through a midlife crisis. What's this old guy talking about? You sound just like I did back in the day with your stubborn and youthful pride. You're probably killing your brain cells out there, doing God knows what to apply any of this advice in a meaningful way. I get it. I was there too. But listen, these conversations are universally golden and will help people of all ages reflect, learn, and grow. So if you hear something that resonates with you in this week's episode, go back and check out some of the other episodes. This week's episode is another tearjerker. I know, 2 weeks in a row. That's why we had you listen to resilience and trauma and acts of service in order to help you cope with these really emotional episodes back to back. But there are some people out there with some pretty heavy stories, and we're always so grateful when they want to share them with me and with you to help remind you that you're not alone and to help you develop some empathy for others, because we never really know what other people are going through. This episode focuses on adoption and identity, so if you're looking for more episodes like that, I recommend checking out episode 14 and summer session 4 with our friend and new mom, Michelle Pan. You can check out episode 29 with my good friend Jill Daler about how she healed from the childhood wounds of being relinquished by her birth mother to find her inner awesome. You can listen to episode 44 with Jody Farr about the urgency of awareness. You can check out episode 33 with Erica Jones about the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion in our lives, because we discussed that as well in this episode. You can also check out episode 36 with Dr. Yvette Erasmus about finding our meaning and purpose through self-journey. And finally, you can check out Summer Session 6, where my friend Iggy Lee and I discuss my self-journey towards meaning and purpose during my time in Seoul, which is actually where I met today's guest. So let's go ahead and meet her. Today's guest is Brook Mallak. Brook is a claims attorney in Minnesota. She has also served as an ombudsperson for Asian Pacific families. But the reason she's here today is because she is a Korean adoptee, and she was recently reunited with her birth mother and sisters for the first time. And the way the two of us just happened to meet halfway around the world while we were both on our separate journeys is just further proof that the world works in mysterious ways. Brook is here today to talk about that reunification experience and how her time in Korea has her feeling too foreign for here, yet too foreign for home. You guys need to buckle up because this is going to be a wild story, and Brook has a wild personality, and I'm very excited to have her on the show. So welcome to the show, Brook Mallak.
Yay! Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's fun that you are here, and we'll tell the story about how we met a little bit later. But long story short, we're both in Minnesota. You live in St. Paul. I live in Minneapolis. And ever since we met in Korea, by just the way the world works, you and I have become besties because we have very similar personalities.
Yes.
In that you're obnoxious and I'm obnoxious.
I like to say that I am outgoing and charismatic. You, on the other hand, are obnoxious.
You bastard.
And you laugh like a donkey.
Pot kettle black,
yes,
I believe
true,
here.
True.
Okay, so I'll tell you what, we have had a lot of fun getting to know each other over the last couple of months. So we're going to dive into this backstory here. But before we do that, Brook, we always ask our guests what 10 roles they play in their life. So what are the 10 roles that you play in your life?
My 10 roles are I'm a mom, I'm a daughter, a big sister, a lawyer, unfortunately, a group fitness instructor, a golfer, a volunteer, a traveler, a Korean adoptee, and a big lover of music.
You just went to saw Ario Speedwagon at the State Fair, correct?
I did, and Styx. And then 2 nights later, I was with you at Champs and Eden Prairie to see Gen X Jukebox, which I would have loved to have seen them again on Monday, on Labor Day, but that didn't work out. That was just a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was a good time. I'm glad you got to see Brian on the bass do his thing. You had a good time, right?
I did. I love those guys. I can't wait to make it to see them again. It was so much fun.
It's important to me that you are here to keep my spirit and energy at those shows. So the expectation is that you are on the dance floor shaking the leg during those Gen X Jukebox shows.
Next time, especially if I can stay later. Next time. Later, there'll be lots of dancing. And no, you can't take any videos.
I'll be in Korea, so don't worry about it.
True story.
Safe. You're safe. So I imagine maybe you want to keep a low profile as a lawyer. You know, you don't want that used against you in any court of law. Or you said you're a claims lawyer. Tell us more about that.
So as a claims attorney, I work for an insurance company and I handle claims that come in. We are a provider for professional responsibility liability insurance for lawyers. Lots of people don't like lawyers, but lawyers need help too. So in my role, a lot of times it is probably listening to lawyers, telling me about a claim that maybe is founded or unfounded, but providing some support to them, emotional support, telling them I understand, that I'm there to help them. Sometimes it is getting a lawyer to represent them because I work for the insurance company, but if they've been sued or they have an ethics complaint filed against them, we will arrange to get attorneys for them, work within their policy limits, just a lot of different aspects to it. We provide coverage in 16 states, including Minnesota. So it's all over the country.
One of the roles that you're most looking forward to in the second half of life is traveler. So you kind of got a taste of that this summer when you went back to Korea. Where else have you traveled? Where do you want to travel?
I want to travel everywhere, quite frankly. I've traveled several places throughout the continental United States. I've been all over the Caribbean, Mexico, and Korea was the farthest I've gone. And then in August of 2021, my son and I went to Barcelona, and we were supposed to go to Morocco, Marrakesh, Morocco in March of this year. Unfortunately, I was transitioning jobs, so I couldn't take the time off. So eventually we would like to make that trip, but I really, now that I've been to Korea, I want to take him on the next trip, and I really want to take him this next year.
Of all the places that you have been, I'm going to guess Korea was the best for you for a lot of reasons, which we'll discuss. So what would be your second favorite of all the places that you traveled?
My second favorite was definitely Barcelona. That was just really a fantastic trip. It wasn't what we had planned. We were supposed to be on a Mediterranean cruise to go fly into Barcelona and go to Italy and go to, I think, France. I can't even remember because it got canceled, and then return to Barcelona and fly out. But we had booked the airfare already, so we just pivoted and said, let's just go to Barcelona. And that was my first trip abroad where I spent a significant amount of time in one location. And that was the second best trip. And my son is older at that point. He was an adult. So it was a completely different sort of experience to be with him there and for us to both, for the first time, experience a real international trip together. So that would be right up there with going to Korea because I think it was such a life-changing experience for him too.
Now, not only do you provide a service as a lawyer, but you also provide service as a volunteer. What do you do for volunteer work? Why is that so important to you? We talked to Dr. Lena Haji about the importance of volunteering for self-care. And so is volunteering a self-care thing for you? Why is it important for you to do?
Volunteering is an important part of my self-care, and I also believe in giving back to other people. I have been fortunate to be the recipient of support and help from others who are part of the community, not part of my family, and I can really do see the difference that it makes in people's lives. And I also see the difference it makes in my life because I'm a lawyer by day. I have made the conscious decision to not volunteer with law-related activities because I feel like I get enough of that. And to really give myself a break from what is my career, I have chosen to volunteer with a number of organizations. So I relocated to St. Paul from northern Minnesota almost a year ago. And I haven't been involved in volunteer opportunities here just because I have been seeing what's around and seeing what I think is, or I feel are impactful organizations. So I'm starting to work into volunteering here. But when I was in the Brainerd area, I was a board member for the Brainerd Public Schools Foundation, partially because my son was in that school district. And personally to me, public education really helped me change my life. And that I could see and absolutely see it helping other people. So I wanted to give back for what I received. And also I was a longtime junior achievement volunteer and board member. I mean, if you ever need a break from your serious life, go volunteer in a classroom because you will not be able to think about anything else besides all the things that are going on with the kids, answering 100 questions, trying to get them to focus, and just really having fun with them. And that will also restore your faith in humanity. When you're a lawyer, you begin to question if anybody is a good person. And you go see these kids and they're just, it's a phenomenal experience. So I did that a lot to help keep my sanity as a lawyer. I've done other volunteering with, there's a program in Brainerd called Presenting Yourself, which is business women like myself would volunteer to help women who were, a lot of them had been in prison and in jail in criminal trouble or were non-traditional, trying to re-enter the workforce, trying to help them understand about here's how you network, here's how you interview, here's how you introduce yourself and shake hands and have an elevator pitch and do a resume. So those were some of my main sort of volunteer activities when I was in that area. And now I'm looking for some similar sorts of volunteer activities here, probably not with the school district because I don't have a child in the school district anymore. So that investment isn't as solid as it was where I was before. So I have my eyes open. I have an application in to be a board member for the Children's Home Society, which we'll probably get to later in the story. They were involved in my adoption process to come here.
That adoption process, we're going to dive into it, but it's made you a daughter again. And that is one of the roles that you're looking forward to in the second half of life. And we talked a little bit about that before we started recording. It was a big light bulb moment for me. So can you share what you mean by the excitement of being a daughter again in the second half of life?
So with my adoptive parents, my adoptive mother and I have a very strained and I would say non-existent relationship. And we have not had contact really since I was 17 years old, and that's by my choice. And my adoptive father, he and I are very close, and he passed away in 2015. So since that time, I have really felt orphaned without a parent and not as a daughter, not having that person above me, for lack of better terms, that cared about me and unconditionally loved me and worried about me. And so I didn't have that until my birth family found me. And it was a little strange at first because I didn't know my birth mother. But now that it's happened, it's very comforting. And I thought, I feel like I kind of get a second chance at it now that my dad is gone, and really just get to see, I think, what I always really wanted a mother to feel for me and how I wanted a mother to treat me and care about me that I didn't have growing up.
Well, this is the story that we're going to explore. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break. And then when we come back, Brooke is going to talk about that reunification process, what that looked like, the excitement of meeting her sisters for the first time, meeting her mother, and meeting me, of course.
Of
the
course.
best part of the trip.
The absolute highlight.
Thank you for listening to the Mindful Midlife Crisis. Thank you for listening to the Mindful Midlife Crisis. If you're enjoying what you've heard so far, please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. Also, giving the show a quick 5-star review with a few kind words helps others find and benefit from this podcast just like you are. Finally, please spread the wealth of free knowledge and advice in this episode by sharing it with the people in your life who may find this information and my mission to help others live a more purpose-filled life valuable. My hope is that these conversations resonate with others and inspire people to live their best lives. Thanks again. And now, back to the show. Welcome back to the Mindful Midlife Crisis. We are here with Brook Mallak. Brooke and I met in Korea. She has a phenomenal story about meeting her birth mother and her sisters. When I heard it, I just absolutely had to have her share the story here on the podcast. Before we dive into that, though, it's crazy how we met. So
It is.
There I was eating lunch at a restaurant in Seoul, and it was Korean barbecue. It was going to be a really delicious meal. And in walks this woman, and I have to kind of paint the picture here of what I'm seeing. In walks this woman who has this punk rock vibe about her because she has her head shaved except for the top part, and it's curly, and she's got on a leather jacket, and she sits down with 2 other women. And I looked at her and I knew that, okay, I feel like this is a Korean adoptee because she very much has an American vibe about her, and which is something we're going to get back to here in a little bit. But I looked at her and I was like, this is word for word what I said. Your hair is fucking badass. And she said, thank you. Are you from the United States? And I said, yep. She said, where from? I said, Minnesota. Get out of here. That's where I'm from too. What part? And I said, Minneapolis. She said, I live in St. Paul. I said, give me your number because we are now best friends because the world has brought us together thousands of miles away from Minnesota. And the people that you were sitting with were your sisters who you met for the first time ever the night before.
Yes.
And you all looked a little hungover, and that's why you wanted to get some good lunch. Correct?
Yes. Yes. The day before, I met my sisters for the first time and also met my brother-in-law. And we ended up doing Noribang. Which,
so for those, what's Noribang to people who don't know?
Which is the Korean version of karaoke, but it's not in front of people. You are put in your own private room. They give you almost like VIP bottle service. So you order whatever you want for alcohol and food, and you can keep ordering alcohol and keep the room. And so you just basically are in, there was no windows. You don't know what time of day it is. It's like being in a casino in Las Vegas. And you just sit there and drink and sing songs terribly and laugh and eat food that they bring to you. It was so much fun. And then we went and got late night fried chicken and drank some more. And
Chimek. You got Chimek, right?
Yes.
Because in Korea, they have what's called Chimek, which is KFC, Korean fried chicken, and beer.
Yes.
Those are the only 2 things that they serve at these joints is Korean fried chicken and beer. And
Yes.
Norabong is without a doubt the most fun I have ever had. The 2 times that I've been to Norabong, maybe 3 times, the time of my life. I absolutely loved it.
It was a really great experience with my sisters and brother-in-law as well because they can generally read English, so they could sing American songs, which was kind of shocking to me because we had a difficult time communicating. They don't understand spoken English, but they can read it. So it was a really fun way for us to communicate in a sense that we were picking songs, and then sometimes they would know them, so they would chime in. Sometimes I just knew the songs, but it was a blast. And we were very relaxed. We had been together for several hours at that point. So it was kind of the nice end to the day because I'm pretty sure they had a lot of feelings leading up to that, as I did. So kind of releasing all of that and just letting our hair down and being really very natural with each other was exactly, I think, just the perfect ending to that time, because then the next day when you saw me, we had to part ways. And then I didn't see them again till towards the end of my time in Korea. So it worked out perfectly that we were able to do that and also do that without my birth mom there, because the next day when we were all laying by our dog dishes, the first thing anybody says is, "Don't tell mom."
Well, let's take a step back here because this has been 2 years in the making,
Yes.
and COVID got in the way of this. So, can you walk us through this reunification program that you used in order to reconnect with your family in Korea?
Well, so it was a combination of a couple different things that result in the reunification, but I'd applied to go to Korea with a group called Me in Korea. It's a nonprofit organization that was started by a woman who's Korean. She's not a Korean adoptee. However, somehow through college, she ended up working with an organization and she escorted Korean adoptees from Korea to America. And somehow through that process, she decided that she really wanted to help bring Korean adoptees back to Korea. So she can speak Korean. This ultimately became her full-time job. So I applied with the program to go. And if you are accepted to go, then during the time of the tour, that program pays for your room and board. You have to pay for your airfare. And so I was accepted to go. We were supposed to go in June of 2020. And as part of the process, Me in Korea will also reach out to all the tour members, reach out to their adoption agencies in Korea. Because one of the things that we do in the tour is they take groups to their respective adoption agencies there, and they still have the paper files. So they're telling them, look, these people are coming. Please check the files to see if there's anything in the files that they should be aware of that wasn't disclosed to them. Sometimes birth families would go and leave letters for adoptees in the files. They were doing that. And when Me in Korea contacted my adoption agency, they said, we have nothing new to tell you. I had tried to find my biological family in 2014, and it came up at a dead end. And then once I found that out, I got on the internet and started looking for resources. And I had my parents' birth names, my birth name, and you would think it would be fairly simple to find them with that information. But in Korea, they have identification numbers that are tied to birth dates. And because when my mother brought me into the agency to relinquish me, the person who's filling out the paperwork in the little box on the form where it says date of birth, they put age. I couldn't find them because I had the dates of birth. So I got on the magic internet. There was a website for Korean adoption services that had a page for biological families looking for adoptees, which I looked, nobody's looking for me. But they also had the opposite of that, where adoptees could post information on there for biological families to find. So I posted all my information on there. And what happened is that our tour in 2020 got canceled in March. And probably about 2 weeks after that, I received an email from the adoption agency in Korea telling me that a woman contacted them saying that she was my sister and asking if I wanted to do DNA testing. We were just started lockdown here in Minnesota, and my first thought in my mind was, great, I finally find my biological family, and we're all going to die in a pandemic apocalypse. So it was so many like, oh, this is awesome, but no, I'm never going to get to see them. And what if they die with COVID or something before I get there? And so we go through the process. My first sample got lost. I sent the second sample, and then it was Memorial Day weekend in 2020. I received an email from the social service agency saying that my mom had gone in and tested and there was a match. And I found out later on, after I communicated with my family, that my sister, who's I'm the oldest in the family. My sister, who's next in age to me, she found the post on Korean Adoption Services website, and she had not known that that was available. And I'm not sure if she was just looking and Googling and found my name, my birth name, but that's how it happened. So it just coincided with everything happening with the tour through me in Korea.
There's so many things going on here, but I think I want to hear about the emotional roller coaster that this experience was for you, because what are you thinking? What are you feeling when you get that email that you may have found your sister, that you get a match from your mom? You talked about the feeling of, well, crap, COVID, am I going to be able to meet my family here? What's the emotion of, come on and open up the borders, please? Because South Korea is one of the last countries to open up the borders as well. So walk us through some of the emotion through that. What were some of your thoughts going through that process?
At first, when I was contacted by the agency, I thought this is probably not true. So just really trying to manage my expectations, don't get my hopes up, because they were crushed when I found out that was a dead end, and that because I didn't have my parents' birth dates, that there was nothing else that the agency or the National Police Force could do in trying to find them through their records. Then trying not to think about it while I was waiting for the genetic testing to be done. But then afterwards, there was a whole slew of other things, such as, are they going to like me? What are they like? Are they going to not like me? Are they going to, because I've heard from other adoptees, are they going to try to exploit me because they think all Americans are rich, and then they're going to want money from me, and they're all of these things to try to support my family there? And are they not going to want to have a lot of contact with me? What is our relationship going to be defined as? And also, just honestly, what are they going to think about me? Because you already said it, I'm a little out there. I'm kind of rebellious. I'm pretty wild, but I'm also very goal-oriented. I'm a hard worker. I'm committed to giving back to others. There's all of these things where I just start questioning, what are they going to think about me? And are they going to like me? And what if they don't like me? How am I going to feel? What if I don't like them? What if we have nothing to talk about? What if we just sit in uncomfortable silence? I mean, what is this going to be? So all those things were there. And then we started communicating. And of course, even though they can read English, my sisters can because they had it in school. But once they got out of school and they weren't using it, they lost the ability to converse in English. And I don't read or speak Korean. So how are we going to communicate? So we were translating emails back and forth to each other and just really feeling things out. And then I was communicating only with my middle sister, and she was the only person who I had contact information for. And come June of 2020, I didn't get a response for months, and I had no other way to contact anybody else. So then I started worrying, like, oh my gosh, she got COVID and died, and nobody else knows how to reach out to me. And so I'm pretty sure probably my youngest sister had something to do with this, because my mom created a Facebook account and friended me on Facebook, and I didn't think about it, and I accepted it, and which I usually don't do. And then pretty soon she messaged me and said, "This is Mom. Here's my email address." Like, thank God, because it had been months and I hadn't heard from anybody. And through that, then I started communicating with my youngest sister, and then really found out that Korean laws are very different than here. And when you go into significant financial debt, which a lot of people this happened to with COVID, and you're not able to pay it back, they want to charge you with a crime. So my middle sister and her husband had a real estate brokerage business, and they had done well for years. And they had just taken out financing to do this big project at a shopping mall, I believe, probably something like 5 million won. Then pandemic happens, everything shuts down, and they lost their home to the bank, and they ran off because law enforcement was looking for them. So I eventually found this out as I was communicating with my youngest sister, who coincidentally is kind of like the Korean version of me. She's super sassy and funny. She is just a trip. So she and I eventually got to where we were messaging about, do you get Asian flush when you drink? And what do you like to drink? And different stories like that, and traveling and significant relationships, with boyfriends and different things like that. So she and I really got to know a lot about each other, which was great. So the 2 years that I was waiting to go back there was a great time for us to lay foundation for when I went there. And so then I was also emailing with my mom, just messages to her back and forth and such. And then eventually my middle sister has resurfaced, but law enforcement is still looking for her and her husband, unfortunately, which is a really sad, scary, terrifying sort of deal for them. I was at my youngest sister's place in Busan, and the cops came to my sister's house looking for them. So it's just, that makes me really sick thinking about what could happen to them when it all kind of comes down to it. So that time was good. There was a lot of time where I thought, this is never going to happen. I'm never going to see them. I just really would get depressed about it because it just kept canceling. And then we got variants and it just seemed like it was never going to happen. So when it finally was starting to happen this year, it didn't seem like reality. I couldn't wrap my brain around, like, I'm actually going. I'm going to go to, I didn't pack. I kind of had packing going on. And then all of a sudden it was go time and I had nothing together. I just threw a bunch of stuff in the suitcase and off I went.
So I think it's important to provide some context here because Minnesota has one of the highest Korean adoptee populations in the United States. So I think that's really important to understand because I think every Korean person that I know in Minnesota, at least 95% of them are Korean adoptees. And I've had conversations with Korean adoptees about, do you want to find your birth family? And it's interesting because it's kind of a 50-50 split in yes, I would like to find them, and no, I'm not really interested in that. So what compelled you to want to find your birth family? You had mentioned just kind of losing that connection with parents. Was that the compulsion or was there more to it?
I had started looking for my birth family before my father passed away, and he had always encouraged me and absolutely supported that. And for a long time, I had said, yeah, I'll do that someday. I didn't feel a need. So I think that what you will find just among adoptees in general, it doesn't have to be Korean or international adoptees. It could be domestic adoptees because my older brother is a domestic adoptee from Minnesota. My former husband is also a domestic adoptee from Minnesota. And both of them have no desire to connect with their biological family or find them. And that's just what they've chosen to do. And then there are some adoptees that I've met that feel like there's just this huge missing hole in their life that will be filled when they find their family. I didn't feel any of that. More so, for a long time, I was curious as far as where does this personality come from? Because this is not from my adoptive family. And are there health issues I should be concerned about? And who do I look like? And all those things that people take for granted when they are raised within their family of origin. So then in 2010, my youngest son died suddenly. And it really struck me about all the pain and the grief that my birth mother would feel for all those years. Because that sort of loss it's indescribable to try to describe to somebody who hasn't gone through it. It's not like losing a parent. I've lost a parent. It's not like losing a good friend or other family members. I've gone through that. There is nothing that equates to that. And it really hit home about all the pain my mother must have been feeling. And so I really decided I wanted to find her to tell her thank you. Thank you for doing what she had to do for me, even though not everything, I had a very hard childhood growing up, but I also wanted to thank her because I knew what she was going through and I knew that deep pain and I could end that for her. I can't end it for myself. So that was really why I started. And then when they told me that they couldn't find them, there was nothing else that they could do. It was really crushing to know that if I couldn't find her, that she would continue to live in the personal hell of a prison that I live in, not ever knowing if I was okay and what happened to me. So that was the real catalyst to find her. And I expressed that to her once we connected to tell her, I just want you to know I'm grateful for you and for giving me life and for giving me the life that I have, even though it wasn't perfect, but I'm here. Please stop hurting over what you did, even though she does, but hopefully it's not as bad as it was.
I want to point something out here. Another thing that we talked about is you corrected a language with me because I was just about to say, can you talk about the circumstances around why you were given up for adoption? But you have changed my language around this to, rather than saying give up for adoption, relinquish for adoption. And so before we get into that piece of it, can you talk about why that language is important?
This is something that I'm learning because I'd always used the words given up for adoption. And when I was in Korea with the tour group, I kept hearing the term relinquish, and to me, that seemed to be more fitting because for the parents that relinquish their children, now not every adopted child from Korea has been relinquished. Quite frankly, some kids were stolen. But for the parents that did relinquish, they had no choice. And when you say give up, you're making it sound like they have a choice. And Korea, even now, but back when I was born and farther back than that, they don't do a good job of supporting single moms. And they did a much worse job back when I was born, that there weren't social service programs to support single moms because the whole adoption of Koreans started with the Korean War. And a lot of children that were given up for adoption were children that were the byproducts of our US soldiers in Korea impregnating Korean women, which were so bastardized, if that's a word, ostracized, that nobody wanted them. Nobody there wanted them. Nobody even wanted to acknowledge that that was going on. So that carried forward into Korea was not going to put forth resources to support single moms, that they were no good, that they were sluts, whatever it was. And so the people who did it didn't have choices.
So then what were the circumstances surrounding your mom and your birth father?
So my mother and birth father were living together as boyfriend, girlfriend. And in Korea, men have to do mandatory military service when they're in between the age of 18 and 20 something. My father, I think, was 20 at the time. So he went off to do his military service, and this is in 1975, so no way to communicate with him. And because they weren't married, she wasn't getting any sort of financial assistance or cut of whatever his military pay was. So he went off and she was pregnant and she didn't know when he was coming back. And if he was going to come back, he was going to come back to her. So I was born in April. In December of the year I was born, after Christmas, on December 30th, she brought me into the social service agency and sat there. And how difficult this had to have been to sit there and give them the information. And because I had a whole history, which a lot of adoptees don't have, as far as what my sleeping habits were, what I ate, when I ate, things that I could do, things that I could say, and I actually had my actual birth date, which a lot of adoptees don't have. I mean, I had all this information that she sat there and very bravely just gave them for whatever reason, which I never did ask her, and maybe I'll ask her, and maybe she remembers and maybe she doesn't, that, did she do that so I would know those things later on in life? Did she do that so the family that received me would know those things? Did she do that so that they would know that she cared for me? But she brought me in, and I was in like a transition place for 4 days before foster mom cared for me until I came to America in June. Lo and behold, after I was gone, not long after that, my father showed up again. And then she told him about me. They ultimately got married and had 2 more children. My sister's closest in age to me is probably 18 months younger than me. So it seems like she probably got pregnant right away after he came back. And then my other sister's 6 years younger than me. My birth father died in 2004 of a heart attack. And they waited until my oldest sister was 20 when they told her about me. So for 25 years, she looked for me, and I didn't know that. And my dad always would say to her, you got to find your sister. You got to find your sister. When I found out that he had passed away, I had not been prepared for that, I don't think, but it really tore me up thinking that he never got to hold me or see me or know that I was found before he died. And I didn't know the man, but it just was another loss. I didn't get to know him, and he didn't get to know about me, and he knew about me for years, and they tried to find me, and how awful that would be to be a parent that dies, knowing that you have a child out there and you haven't found them. And my mother told me when I was there, she had said that she never thought that they would find me, and she thought that she would die and her eyes would always be open because she would be looking for me. And that now when she dies, she can close her eyes because I was found.
Well, I need a minute. So we're going to do this. We're going to take a break. We're going to all exhale and just kind of reset here because that was a doozy. And we're going to continue talking to Brooke when we come back. Thank you for listening to the Mindful Midlife Crisis. Thank you for listening to the Mindful Midlife Crisis. New episodes come out every Wednesday to help you get over the midweek hump. If you'd like to contact me, Or if you have suggestions about what you'd like to hear on the show, visit www.mindfulmidlifecrisis.com and click Contact Us. While you're there, don't forget to sign up for the newsletter to get free weekly meditations as well as free resources from our Reflect, Learn, Grow program. You can also click on the show notes for links to the articles and resources we reference throughout the show. If you want to check out my worldly adventures, follow me on Instagram at mindful_midlife_crisis. My hope is that my trials, tribulations, and successes will inspire you to take intentional action to live a more purpose-filled life. And while you're at it, remember to show yourself some love every now and then, too. Thanks again. And now, back to the show. Welcome back to the Mindful Midlife Crisis. We are here with Brook Mallak. Brook is sharing her story about reunifying with her birth family in Korea. She met her sisters. She met her mom. Amazing experience, amazing story. Wild how the two of us met, and having this opportunity here to sit down with her and listen to this story. It's obviously very emotional for her. And as an empath, I'm feeling the intensity of this story too. And I hope you're feeling the intensity of this story as well. And I hope it makes you want to reach out to a loved one and tell them how much you miss them and how much you love them. I imagine that's what it was like when you finally got to hold your mom. So what was that experience like when you first met your mother as an adult?
Oh, it still feels like a dream. It felt like it wasn't real because I had waited for so long for it. And prior to us meeting, when I was with the tour group, I learned about this Korean term called omapum, which the best way to explain what that means is omapum is a mother's embrace. And it means everything that you feel from your mom's embrace. You feel love and warmth and security and safety and strength and all these things that you don't think about when you do it. So the next time you hug your mom, think about what you're feeling, because it's not just a hug. And so, as I explained earlier, not having a good relationship with my own mother, my adopted mother, and not having my dad for years, having that parental hug was something I had not had for so long. And so having that from her, it just was like all the years that I had missed that really came crashing down because I didn't know how much I had missed it. And I didn't really probably understand that as independent and stubborn and whatever I am, I need a parent. I need that unconditional love and that support. And not having that was really extremely difficult. And having my mother wrap her arms around me and feeling that omapum, feeling all those things that I didn't have for so many years, it took so much pain away from me and it gave me so much strength. And she kept saying, she doesn't know a lot of English, she kept saying sorry to me. And to think about how much pain that she was feeling for me made me feel bad, because I don't want her to feel pain for my life and for me being around. And I can't help any of that, obviously, because things are the way that they are. But she kept saying that. And I could feel her sorrow too. And knowing what my sorrow has been like, having lost my child, I could feel that connection that we both have had that pain. So there was some easing of that, which isn't the right word, but a little bit of healing with that for myself, I know. And I think for her too, because of course for her, she waited for that for 45 years that I was gone, but it was one of the best hugs I've ever had in my entire life. And in Korea, they're very different about holding hands and such. And so you'll see women walking around holding hands. And my sisters did that with me, which I got very used to. And then my mother did that with me. And walking around holding my mother's hand was the sweetest thing I've ever had happen really in my life. And we'd sit and talk and she would hold my hand. And I thought, wow, I kind of felt like a little child again, having my mother hold my hand. It was just so different than what I've had for so long, because I have not had a parent and I've always been pretty strong and independent. But then really I kind of resorted and reverted to being back to a child, which I forgot how to do. So that was really nice to have my mother worry about me and love me and hold my hand and try to help me with things and try to get me things. I kind of didn't know what to do with myself.
Well, and also part of this experience was getting to explore Korea.
Yes.
And so what were some of the things that you got to see? What were some of the things you got to do as part of that as well? Because not only did you get to meet your family, but you got to explore your homeland as
Yes.
well and experience it. And we're going to talk about this too, but experience it almost as a foreigner. So can you talk about that a bit?
Well, I was absolutely a foreigner. I think that, as you said, when you saw me, I had an American vibe and definitely had an American vibe when I was there. I think that it was very obvious to anybody who would see me that I was not what I would call Korean, that if I was in fact Korean, that I had been living abroad somewhere. So being there, I remember I have not seen large numbers of Koreans in one spot in my life until this trip. So I flew from here to Chicago. I get to the gate in Chicago, which instead of being in a big area where there's a bunch of gates, it was a small little enclave where they had two gates, and one was for our flight. When I walked into this area to get ready to board, I just got goosebumps because it was full of Koreans, and I had not seen that many Koreans in one spot my whole life. And I just stood there with my mouth hanging open thinking, whoa, this is amazing. And then stepping off the plane and then seeing them everywhere and just walking about and doing their thing. And I thought, oh my gosh, I finally found a place where I kind of fit in. I kind of look like these people, but at least it's not all white people. So that was really, I loved that experience because not seeing a lot of Koreans in my lifetime, I haven't seen a lot of variety of Koreans, so I haven't seen a lot of different Korean looks. So that just in and of itself, I'm pretty sure I was gawking around to everybody because it just was so many things to look at that I haven't seen before. I spent several days in Seoul, which you and I spent one day running around. We went to the Gwangjang market and ate at the noodle place that was on Netflix, which was phenomenal. I have watched that episode twice since I've been home. And just now seeing the places that they show that I've been to, I think, oh, I was there. I ate those noodles. I was there and I was there. So that was a fantastic experience. And then when we did the city wall walk, a little bit of it, just the views from that area were breathtaking. And being around Seoul was a really wonderful experience because it's so densely populated and there's so many things there, but it's also just very easy to traverse and check out and be around and not feel endangered. Considering how many people are there, it's very safe. We also went up to the DMZ, which is kind of eerie, thinking about how close you are. And there were times where we were traveling around where the fence was up and you think, okay, on the other side of that DMZ is a crazy guy and people who are living in deep poverty and they're completely destroying their natural environment, which you can see when you're looking through the binoculars, that they're deforesting everything, they're not replanting. It's just really illustrative of what's happening to the people in that country. So that was a really surreal experience to do that.
When I went to the DMZ and looked through the binoculars and saw that massive North Korean flag blowing in the wind, you're right, it's surreal.
Yeah.
Because you can look through the binoculars and you can see North Koreans in their natural habitat. And it's just like, wow, this is so out there that there's such a disconnect between our reality and their reality.
Well, and for us, where we live in Minnesota, we don't live near a border where we see that kind of disparity. Whereas if we were down in the southern part of the United States, like in Texas, for example, or California, you would see that and that wouldn't be so jarring. But for those of us who are Midwesterners seeing that, it was like, whoa, they're right there. And that crazy guy is right over there too. So that just made it more real. When you're looking at that stuff from the other side of the world, it's one thing. But when you're really there, you think, wow, we are this close to somebody who wants to blow up everybody. And
just to give people kind of an idea, the DMZ, I believe, is 4 kilometers wide. And so kilometers, that's probably about 2.5 miles, right? So you can get to a certain point. So really, we're probably about, from the DMZ lookout, it's probably about 3 miles. But you can see people through the binoculars. You can see the flag waving. So it really is a wild experience. I don't know if you know this or not, but my friend Vance in Korea sent me a text that said that they are potentially opening up trails so you can walk the DMZ. You can go on hiking trails along there. And what's interesting is he talked about, I'm still holding out for reunification someday. And it's a very interesting, and we don't need to get into the politics of it all, but I think it is important for people to go and do some research on the Korean War, because it's nicknamed the Forgotten War. And that's really what it is. The most haunting war memorial that I've ever seen is the Korean War Memorial in Washington, D.C. at night. They look like ghosts. It is eerie to visit the Korean War Memorial in Washington, D.C. at night, because those statues look like ghosts. And understanding the Korean War is really important for understanding how Korea is what it is today, and understanding that they are in a Cold War right now.
They're still technically at war.
Correct. They're still technically at war. And the more you learn about that situation, you learn that the North Koreans had pretty much taken over all of South Korea except for the Busan area, which is very close to where you were born.
I was born in Busan.
Yeah, so Busan is the second largest city in South Korea. They had it entirely captured except for that area, and then that's when the Allied forces joined and pushed them back. And we almost had the North Koreans pushed completely out, and then there's so many forces that go into play there. So we won't turn this into a history lesson because we probably don't have all the information, but it really is important to get a better understanding of the Korean War so that you can understand the dynamics of why, especially in Minnesota, there are so many Korean adoptees here. And if you're not from the Midwest, you probably don't have a real understanding of just how many Korean adoptees are in the Midwest, especially in Minnesota. And do you notice that?
Yeah, and actually, I think Minnesota has the most in the entire world. We have roughly 20,000 Korean adoptees here. So in an unofficial sense, a lot of people refer to Minnesota as the Korean adoptee capital of the world because there are so many here. And I honestly don't know the reason why that is and how that ended up occurring, because one of the main adoption agencies in Korea that is still alive and well and active is called Ahold. And the gentleman who started that was from Oregon. So I really don't know why that resulted in so many Korean adoptees being in the state of Minnesota. But yes, understanding the Korean War will help people understand how it is that over 200,000 Koreans were adopted out of Korea internationally, and also start the education, I think, for people to see that there's trauma surrounding adoption. And for so long in my upbringing, and I still hear it now, but it was always pounded into my head about you should be so grateful. You should be so grateful that your family brought you in, that you could be poor in Korea and all these other things. And now as an adult, I struggle with I should be so grateful that I lost heritage, that I lost culture, that I lost a family because of a country that didn't support its people, including me. And that, yes, perhaps I would have been poor. I was poor here, but I would have had love, which I didn't have that in some sense here. So for me, and I know other adoptees, as we get older, it comes that we're not on that bandwagon of everybody should be thankful about adoption. There's hurt and trauma and rejection and abandonment and all these feelings that people feel, that when people continue on that bandwagon of you should be grateful, then those of us who are feeling those feelings, we feel guilty because we're not grateful. We feel like our feelings are invalidated because if we say them, then we're just going to get the, well, you're just ungrateful response, which I know I had that in my family growing up. The you should be so grateful took every power away from anything that if I ever said that, I don't like the way you guys do this, I don't like the way you guys do that. Well, you should just be grateful that you were adopted. Okay, so I had no agency to stand up for myself and stand up for my siblings. We're all adopted. It's just, you should just be grateful. So basically that forgives all of your sins as the adopted family. And I've met other, not all, but I've met other adoptees, whether or not they're Korean or they're domestic adoptees, who have had the same experience. So for people to say that all the time, I'm shifting to where I'm trying to educate them and say, it's not all about being grateful, just so you know. There's a lot of trauma that people deal with, and that sometimes they never understand that's trauma. I didn't understand it until just recently. I'm 46 years old because I've had that ingrained in my brain for so long about you should be grateful. So I feel like if I'm not being grateful, then I'm an awful person.
You've touched on this a little bit, and you and I have talked about this a little bit in the past too, but this idea of being too foreign for here, too foreign for home. What does that mean to you, and what feels like home to you?
So I was raised in a small town called Little Falls, which is a couple hours north of here. Population about 7,500, 8,000 people. And lots of small farming communities around that town. And kind of crazy, there were a handful of families that had Korean adoptees in the town. However, we were always outsiders, right? Because we weren't white. It was obvious that we were either with a foreign family or adopted, which all of us were adopted. So there's always that otherness that went along with being raised in a town like that. And even being here now that I've relocated to the metropolitan area, because I lived in rural Minnesota my entire life until last September. It's more prevalent to see other minorities and to see other Asians and to see Koreans and Hmongs and Vietnamese. And I like that because now I have some anonymity, but I'm still not part of the majority. So then going to Korea, it was kind of exciting to think, I'm going to see a lot of Koreans. This is going to be great. I'm going to blend right in. But then we get there, people know right away that we are not, as I said, Koreans. All of us went through this because, first of all, if I dressed in absolute Korean clothes and maybe put a hat on, all you have to do is look at my face. And Koreans are very, very into facial care. Wearing sunscreen all the time. I have sunspots on my face. My face is way tanner than anybody else's. So all you have to do is look at my skin and be like, she is not one of us. So being there, and obviously with the hairdo I have, I would have my hair up in a ponytail because it was always hot. So the bottom was shaved. And so people stared at me a lot. I had a couple of older women that kind of cussed me out in Korean, which I don't know what they were saying, but I could tell by the finger pointing and pointing at my hair that they were giving me the what for having my hair shaved off. So then I didn't feel like I belonged there either. Even though I kind of looked like the people that were around there, everybody knew I was a foreigner. And the other adoptees I was with, we all shared this feeling. And so we would talk about this. And really, honestly, the place that I feel at home, and we all said this to each other, was with our fellow adoptees and with our adoptees that were on the tour, because we experienced these things together. We supported each other. We listened to each other. Not everybody had the same feelings, but that feeling about, I don't belong here and I don't belong where I was raised and where I live. We all had that. And that was a hard pill to swallow because I think we were all going into this believing that we would show up to Korea and boom, finally found a place where we belong. And we did, in a sense, because we were together and we found it together, but we didn't when we were out in the general public. It was a good and a bad thing because we found each other to support each other, but it was also that sense of, I don't have a place in the world. Asians aren't considered to have had as much oppression as the rest of the people of color, so we're not considered people of color for purposes of white people, Black people, Hispanics, American Indians looking at us as minorities because, we're the model minority, so we don't have trouble. So there's never that consideration for the fact that we experience discrimination and racism from other communities of color. It just adds to this whole feeling of there is no place that I belong. Because if I assert that I'm a person of color, it is that, yeah, but you're not Black. Yeah, but you're not American Indian. I'm sorry, I didn't realize that we were going to have oppression Olympics here and compare scorecards. So I don't know that that's necessarily puts anybody ahead, but all those things are always circling around. And then having that added layer of, I went to my quote unquote home country and then I don't feel at home there either. Like, okay, well, I guess I'll just probably continue and do my thing. But that's a hard thing to not feel like you belong anywhere.
Now that your son is off to college, is there any desire to give it a whirl in Korea and live there for a while?
It's complicated, but I have thoughts about it. And the more I think about it, the more I think of ways to make that happen. Because in the one sense, my first and foremost priority in my life is my son. I deal with this idea if I did go there, that I would lose time with him. And everybody says, well, go live your life. But I have a different life history that makes it very difficult. Since my other son died, I have felt like I can't miss out on time with my living son because I missed years, 12 years now, with my youngest son. That's something that's really hard for me to get past and thinking about why I could go live abroad and not be close to my son. That's really difficult. On the flip side of that, I think I've had this time with him. I really want to have now other time with my birth family in Korea. And so the idea of being able to live there and work there for a time period is very enticing, but I just don't know if I could do it with the idea of being away from my son. It's like there's this competing priorities. What's the top priority? And they're kind of even, and they're on the other sides of the world. So how do I live a life with that being there? So one of the thoughts I have is my son wants to go to dental school after he's done with undergrad, which would be here at the University of Minnesota, and he would likely be living with me. And that would be a real good time for me to go away. Because I love the kid, but I live in a condo and it's not that big. And so it's kind of like, okay, well, maybe then knowing that he was there and the condo was taken care of, I could go for a time period. But the hard part is that then if I only go for half a year and I come back here, what do I do for work? Because I can't do the job I have now there because of the time change. Even though I can work remotely, I don't think would work. So there's just things that I think as far as the planning goes, if it's meant to be in the universe, I'll figure those things out. I have time. My son just started sophomore year. I have time to think about it really more and look at what I could potentially do. But yes, I'd always thought about living abroad, not necessarily Korea, but I always really just want to leave America and go live somewhere else. But there's always that thing about, oh, my son. And then eventually he's going to have family and he'll have children. And I want to be there because I would like to damage his kids just as much as I've damaged him. I mean, I got a job to fulfill. So I don't know how to make that happen when I'm around the world. So we'll figure it out. I don't know. I really do think about it a lot, especially now I have my family there. So we'll see what happens. Or maybe I just take a big chunk of time off and come and travel around with you in Korea and then come back.
Well, I was going to say I can be the surrogate and spread the energy and the love and joy to your family in Korea until you get there. And like I said, we both have big, obnoxious personalities. I'm sorry, outgoing personalities. Yes. Maybe I could fill that void a smidge for them and just say, Brooke says, I love you. I am so grateful to have you in my life. And it is just wild to me that we met halfway around the world. And these past 2 months have really been an amazing time for us to get to know each other. And I've really enjoyed that time. And I've heard bits and pieces of this story. And so for you to go in depth and be so vulnerable and share so much of this story with me and our listeners, I am eternally grateful for your friendship and for this story. Thank you so much for being here today.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me. And thank you, everybody, for listening.
Hey, if you enjoyed this week's episode, be sure to look in the show notes for all of Brooke's contact information. Also, I know Brooke and I would greatly appreciate it if you would share this episode with the people in your life who may benefit from her expertise and life experiences. As I said at the beginning of this episode, the purpose of the show is to help you navigate the complexities and possibilities of life's second half. So I hope this conversation provided you with some insight that will help you reflect, learn, and grow. If you did find some value in this week's conversation, be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. If you're an Apple listener, please consider taking a minute or two to leave a 5-star review with a few kind words. And if you're a Spotify listener, click those 5 stars under the show art. Finally, you can check out the rest of our episodes at www.mindfulmidlifecrisis.com or wherever you get your podcasts. So for Brooke, this is Billy. Thank you for listening to the Mindful Midlife Crisis. May you feel happy, healthy, and loved. Take care, friends.